The remains of a female vampire pinned to the ground by a sickle across her throat and a padlocked toe to prevent her returning from the dead have been found in a village in Poland.
A group of brave men reopened their graves in the middle of the night and pierced the corpses with an iron or wooden rod. Iron rods were used for the richer vampires.
What if everything you learned about human history in school was completely wrong? In 2018, scientists made a discovery so shocking that it forced them to rewrite textbooks worldwide. And that's just the beginning. Today we're diving into archaeological finds so controversial, so mind-bending, that they've been labeled forbidden by mainstream academia. Stick around because number 3 will literally give you chills.
The head and the jawbone belonged to one man, and the pelvis belonged to a second man, and the rest of the skeleton belonged to a third man. What was going on?
The impossible artwork. Let's start with something that shouldn't exist. In 2014, archaeologists discovered a shell on a riverbank in Indonesia with geometric patterns carved into it. Sounds ordinary, right? Wrong. This shell is 430,000 years old. And it wasn't made by modern humans. The zigzag patterns etched into this ancient shell were created by Homo erectus, a species we've always believed was too primitive for artistic expression. This single discovery pushed back the timeline of human creativity by hundreds of thousands of years. Think about it. While we assumed art and abstract thinking were unique gifts of modern humans, our distant ancestors were already creating symbolic patterns before we even existed as a species. This completely shatters the narrative that artistic expression suddenly emerged in a burst of evolutionary innovation just 100,000 years ago. What's even more mind-blowing is that this shell was found alongside other artifacts, suggesting Homo erectus had complex social structures, used fire systematically, and possibly even had primitive language. They weren't the mindless brutes we imagined. They were thinking, feeling, creating beings with their own culture and artistic traditions. But here's what makes this even more disturbing. If Homo erectus could think symbolically and create art, what other primitive behaviors were actually signs of advanced intelligence that we've completely misunderstood? The Frankenstein mummies. Now, prepare yourself for something truly horrifying. In 2001, archaeologists in Scotland made a discovery that would haunt them forever. They found 2 3,000-year-old bodies, a man and a woman, perfectly preserved in a bog. But something was terribly wrong. The man's limbs were grotesquely out of place, and the woman's jaw was far too large for her skull. For 10 years, researchers struggled to understand these anatomical impossibilities until 2012. When the horrifying truth was revealed. These weren't 2 people, they were Frankenstein-like creatures assembled from at least 6 different human beings. The female body was constructed from parts of people who died around the same time, while the male was even more disturbing, assembled from individuals who died hundreds of years apart. The most chilling detail? When these body parts were sewn together, they still had mummified flesh clinging to the bone. Someone, or something, deliberately created these composite humans with surgical precision. But who had the knowledge and motivation to perform such macabre operations 3,000 years ago? And more importantly, why? The oldest crime scene. Let's travel to a 5th century Swedish village where archaeologists uncovered evidence of humanity's darkest nature. In 2010, they discovered the remains of 26 people in a single home, all showing signs of simultaneous execution-style deaths. This wasn't a battle or accident, it was a planned massacre. The victims were found exactly where they fell, alongside fossilized half-eaten fish, coins, and jewelry, evidence of a sudden, brutal ambush. Men, women, and children were systematically murdered in what appears to be one of history's first documented mass killings. But here's the most chilling part. There's no evidence of who carried out these murders or why. No weapons were found, no signs of struggle, no indication of the perpetrator's identity. It's as if the killers simply vanished into history, leaving behind only their victims as silent witnesses to an unspeakable crime. What makes this discovery truly forbidden is that it forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Mass violence and systematic murder aren't modern phenomena. They're woven into the very fabric of human history, the Baghdad Battery mystery. Well, here's where things get really strange. In 1936, archaeologists discovered what appeared to be a simple clay jar in Iraq. Inside was a copper cylinder and an iron rod, components that, when combined with an acidic solution, create a functioning battery. This Baghdad battery is 2,000 years old. Mainstream science dismisses it as a storage vessel, but the implications are staggering. If ancient civilizations possessed electrical knowledge, what else were they capable of? Some researchers believe this artifact suggests contact with a technologically advanced civilization, possibly not from Earth. Consider this. The Sumerians, who lived in the same region, claimed their knowledge came from the Anunnaki, beings from another planet who came to Earth to mine gold. They documented this in thousands of clay tablets, describing advanced technology, aircraft, and genetic manipulation. But here's the truly unsettling part. Multiple Baghdad batteries have been found, suggesting this wasn't a one-off creation, but part of a larger technological system. Some even show signs of having been used, with corrosion patterns consistent with electrical activity. Modern experiments prove these devices can generate enough electricity to power small lights or perform electroplating. So why did this technology disappear from history? Was it deliberately suppressed, or did its creators simply vanish? Coincidence? Maybe. But when you combine the Baghdad battery with Sumerian texts describing sky gods with advanced technology, the picture becomes far more intriguing than conventional archaeology wants to admit. The vampire burials. Our final discovery takes us to medieval Bulgaria, where archaeologists found something that reads like a horror movie script. In 2014, they unearthed the remains of a man with an iron rod driven through his chest and his left leg severed and placed beside his body. This was a vampire burial, a practice designed to prevent the dead from rising again. But this wasn't an isolated incident. Across Eastern Europe, archaeologists have found hundreds of these vampire graves. In Poland, they discovered bodies buried with sickles positioned over their throats, designed to decapitate them if they tried to sit up. What's truly disturbing is the systematic nature of these burials. Entire communities lived in terror of the undead, developing elaborate rituals to keep corpses in their graves. These weren't random superstitions. They were widespread cultural practices spanning centuries and continents. The question remains, what were our ancestors so afraid of that they felt compelled to mutilate corpses? Were these practices based on real encounters with something we've forgotten? Or do they represent humanity's deepest, most primal fears made manifest? These 5 discoveries prove one thing. Our history is far stranger and more advanced than we've been taught. From impossible ancient art to Frankenstein mummies, from lost electrical technology to systematic massacres and vampire fears, each find forces us to question everything. The truth is buried beneath layers of conventional thinking, but once you start questioning the official narrative, you'll never see human history the same way again. If these forbidden discoveries blew your mind, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that challenges everything you thought you knew. What shocked you most? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one.